Hi guys, thanks. I hope you had great lunch. We're gonna get started again. We are a little behind, almost an hour or so, you can call it. But I hope you are liking the discussion. And this is educational for everybody, and that's what we are really looking for. And the guy who doesn't need any introduction because, you know, I will speak too much. Harpreet and I know each other for some time now, and the technology they are putting together out in the market is really exciting. I'm going to let him introduce himself and present some really interesting applications of how network needs to work in conjunction with the applications. API is just a way to interface it, but the reality is how networks are going to take beyond pipes. So I'll let Harpreet explain this and take it away.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So we had a heavy lunch. By the way, the roast beef was phenomenal. It was really, really good. And if you all fall asleep, I apologize for that, but I'm trying to make it go past it. I was hoping it was somebody else who puts me to sleep instead of me putting you guys to sleep. Just as an introduction, I'm the co-founder and CTO of this company called Shabodi. We are based out of 51st state, but we have a very large presence here in Atlanta and California and a bunch of other places. And I will talk about what we do, but we have a very simple problem to solve. So we started in October of 2020. That's when we created ourselves. And we thought we are going to take by storm the private 5G of going big time into all the manufacturing plants, into the airports. We're going to actually go and automate everything. And the Biden Chips Act was coming up over there, and it was a great opportunity for us to make money at that time. But we quickly realized that the industry was not ready for us. We all had a very candid discussion about Wi-Fi's. We had a very candid discussion about SDNs, and so support LoRaWAN, Zigbee's, Bluetooth. We named off as many protocols as we could. But the fact of life is they're here. They're not going to go away. So in 2021, when we started going to the market and we started looking for our engagement, we quickly realized that just going on a private 5G promise was not good enough. We actually had to go into the private wireless promise. And the private wireless promise was, how do I make your network more efficient? How can I actually make the utilization of that more efficient? It was not about a network. It was about solving a problem that those guys had in the manufacturing industry, airports, and so on and so forth. And then I will walk you through some of the use cases over there. And I remember talking at Mobile World Congress, our favorite conference, in 2021 on a stage, and saying network APIs, network services, we need to exploit all of this stuff. We need to go over there and we need to actually make the applications more intelligent. And everybody laughed at me. Fast forward 2025, this year, anybody who was at Mobile World Congress, it was all about AI. It was all about programmability. It is all about exploiting services. So what I'm going to show are some of the charts and the materials we actually did with a partner at Mobile World Congress. Our partner was Orange Networks. Some of you guys might know them. They're based out of France. They're in 18 properties. And what they do is a lot of private 5G, private LTE implementations around Europe. We have a similar partnership over here in the United States with a company called T-Mobile and so on and so forth. And we also work with various private 5G vendors. So yes, Nokia, I love them. Yeah, for whatever reason, GMA, great company. I think one of the most phenomenal products. I come from a heritage of Nortel. That's where I started my 5G, or not 5G, 3GPP journey. Long time ago, R4. I'm a very old person. Don't go with my baldness and so on and so forth. So when I started R4, it was all about separating out, providing a new domain for IMS and providing the call processing. And fast forward R15, when they started introducing SBA, that's where my dream came true. And that's why we started the company, which is about modular architecture, providing the services that our advanced networks can provide for everybody to consume. So this is a chart by Orange, so I cannot take credit for it, but I have to actually take it out exactly what they say. We firmly believe If we are just going to go and talk to our customers about connectivity, about providing yet another big pipe, yet another capabilities, we are going to lose the customer. And I've lost so many customers as the scale up. Losing customer really hurts. So, you know, we have tried to change that. What we have tried to change about is connectivity is very intelligent. If you really ask any implementation that has happened in the enterprise, they actually put a lot of money. So on average, it's what, 15 to $20 million of investment to put a network in. That's a huge investment for a manufacturing plant whose core business is not network. It's just a necessity. If it is a necessity and they're putting 15 to $20 million and you're just telling them, oh, it's just a big pipe of plumbing from point A to point B, and there's no additional value you can get out of it, we lose them, right? So we completely resonate with our partners such as Orange and DevEdge from T-Mobile and the friends of Nokia and Ericsson, GMA, Cisco's, everybody. We have a partnership with almost everybody. That connectivity is more than just providing bitmap providing. It is an intelligent asset. And this goes further, whereby Tamara started this process, thank God for them. Ericsson's with Aduna tried to light a fire underneath it, which is, we're very, very grateful for that as well. But it actually came to a point that the services which are in the network, so somebody was talking about pervasive bandwidth or pervasive connectivity. Is it pervasive connectivity which is very important for my friends in the OT networks? Or is it the fact that they have 500 QC cameras and they need uplink at any given time that you do the QC analysis? Or they need to talk to some AI system at the back? It is not about, as you were very rightly saying, it's not about enabling 2 or 3 use cases. It's actually enabling 300, 400 use cases, which are diverse, which we cannot even dream of, think about, because Harpreet, is not running a factory plant. We actually have to understand what they are doing and how we are trying to. And it is a alphabet soup of Zigbees, BTEs, SCAFs, LTEs, Wi-Fi's, and so on and so forth, that we need to actually provide an ability, a network service from our PLCs, SCADAs, controllers, drives, MESs, distributed control systems, and all those things to work together to leverage what they need at whatever time they need to get. So while my operator friends are talking about connectivity, my customers, which are on the enterprise side, on the manufacturing side, and these are the real feedbacks that we get, they're saying, you know what, I have just too many networks. I have too many networks. My sensor, one sensor is talking field bus, the other one is talking Modbus, the other one is talking Ether over PoE, right? Third one is talking Wi-Fi. I need a consolidation. And I'm not talking, I'm not blessed enough to have a large customer like LG. I have very small, mid-sized customers who are actually doing, $10 billion, $20 billion kind of a manufacturing a year, right? With maybe like 20 plants, 30 plants kind of a stuff. And I do work with a lighthouse customer who is actually putting a very large network. And I do agree with the definition of lighthouse, which is a WEF term to say that these are the ones who are actually showcasing the next generation technology, most operational efficiency and everything, to actually build electronic components for them. But they are also talking about diversity and the issues that our OT friends are facing. IT is easy. And I don't want to undermine IT, but OT is hard. I don't know whether you guys have talked to, when you talk to OT guys, they laugh at me by saying, oh, you come from carrier world, 5 nines? Huh, that's nothing. We talk about 6 9, 7 9. That's what they talk about. So when you talk to them about carrier grade, when you talk about reliability, when I go and talk to them about putting a CPE to do the Modbus to Fieldbus conversion, they go, well, what happens if the CPE crashes? What do you want to do at that time? How do you actually get the guarantee of the network services? The other thing which they are talking about is there are all these network services out there. So we only talked about a few, which is easiest one to talk about. 3GPP, or Kamara calls it QOD, quality on demand, which basically can be network slice selection or QCI, QFI. We can come up with whichever ways we want to slice and dice it. But the fact of the life is, all they're asking is, my sensor, when it needs to communicate to somebody, can you guarantee me a latency? My sensor, when it needs to do an uplink of a video or a large data segment, can you actually provide me the uplink capability? I don't care about downlink at that time. I only care about uplink. My capability, if it actually needs, in a factory, there's this thing called red button, right? You guys must have seen it. When that red button needs to be pressed, I need to have a deterministic path to shut the line down because I cannot do dynamic routing at that time. Can I actually get all of these network services to be consumed by my MES, to be consumed by my SCADA controllers, to be consumed by my PLC controllers, and so on and so forth? So right now, for example, I'm doing a PLC implementation for this Lighthouse factory. They have 4 interfaces on it because, as Ashish rightly said, when that PLC comes down, 1 hour is equal to $1 million worth of production loss. So how would that PLC talk to them? So would they, now the PLC controller guy, think of Siemens, think of ABB, think of Bosch's, think of Schneider's, would the designer over there go and say, you know what, I'm going to actually be talking 802.11ax, so let me actually call that protocol based on USDRP and so on and so forth. Or now I'm going to be talking to LTE, let me talk SCAF and so on and so forth. Oh, by the way, I think I'm talking 5G with, to name something, maybe like a Ravis from Druid and, JMA's Open RAN architecture with E2E1 interfaces, some REC, some SMO. Should I be talking to their language? The issue which comes down to is they do not want to talk different languages. They do not have the ability to talk different languages because they are SCADA control developers. They're PLC control developers. They are not network designers. So what we have been seeing in our engagement so far is that when I go and every chat that I've seen before this, they talk about network, but then we talk about something called applications on top of it. I'm talking about those application guys. When they want to actually utilize the network services, we need to talk their language. And it was interesting at the Mobile World Congress in Las Vegas. Tim was hosting a CIO summit, and he was kind enough to invite me to it. And the GSMA's CIO CTO, Alex Sinclair, was there. And we were talking about APIs. Oh yeah, we should publish APIs. We should talk about that. Because the issue is, when we, the network geeks, talk APIs and the network services, very different than how the SCADA controller guys perceive it. So we need to have a same language and a capability to talk about it. Does that make sense so far? So this is Harpreet's ugly picture. So I apologize for that. I don't know, and I give fault to Ramesh. He's the one who actually made me put this picture up there. But I believe, and I've been preaching that for last, I'm much older than Ashish. He's only been doing it for 15 years. I've been doing it for almost 25, 30 years now. I believe network is a very intelligent. I need that there needs to be a common way for us to exploit and make those applications use the network services. And I believe that the network services will enable the optimization gain and the capitalistic gain and all the stuff that we've been talking about to make money amongst ourselves. And that's where SIs are critical for us. If SIs cannot integrate these networks and capabilities together, none of this will happen because it's not a piecemeal game for Cisco or Aruba or Ethernet or Druid or Airspan or GMA or anybody else to just do piecemeal. It is about weaving the various networks together. It's about bringing those capabilities together, and that's where SIs are very, very critical. So let me give you an example of what we did. So most of you have worked with MESs, right? In the manufacturing plant and capability. If not, typically an MES, which they pick your favorite, Oracle, SAP, or whatever it is. This is a rendering of a semi-real API or a manufacturing plant. In an MES, you typically have alarms coming up on your screen, right? And you're actually getting some capabilities about, the sensors are blaring, or you need to do remote diagnostics, or you need to make a call whether I should be sending a person to diagnose that sensor. or whether I should be going and doing it remotely by panning, tilting, zooming, or whatever it is, the PTZ cameras, and actually zooming into that area and doing something like that. The issue again was exactly what you were talking about: 5 different languages, 20 different protocols, and so on and so forth. So my sensor in this particular use case, for example, is Modbus. My cameras are 5G enabled. How would I make a sensor talk and make a remote diagnostic call to a PTZ camera to pan, tilt, and zoom? Yes, network-wise, we can do all of that stuff. We can actually build an amazing network, but it's about enabling the applications that will utilize the network, and so on and so forth. So this is a real use case that we were actually showcasing at Mobile World Congress in the Orange's booth. So there should be an orange logo somewhere over here. I apologize, I overrode it with my logo. But this was where we were actually trying to show how network API can actually be utilized to make a single API call from a SCADA controller or a PLC controller. So the SCADA controllers could be as simple as a D-Souter's controller for managing different screwdrivers, or it could be Zebra's controller for managing the scanning gun, or it could be anything, right? Which is actually doing that kind of a stuff. In this particular case, the sensor is from Schneider, and the cameras are 5G cameras that we were actually demonstrating. So what we were, let me actually walk you through it. How do I play it? Right here. Right. So let me walk you through this. So in this particular case, a sensor was flaring. A Modbus sensor was flaring. It was going, I've reached some threshold value. I need some kind of a diagnostic issue that we need to talk about over here, which I was trying to highlight earlier in my questions as well. Let me pause it for a second. This sensor, if you ever actually deployed a CBRS network or an N78 network or N77 network or N48, don't care which frequency network out there, SIM fraud is a big issue. How do I know that this sensor, which is requesting an operation control in a real life, is not fraudulent? So I'll give you a real example. In 2021, we did a factory deployment in Pennsylvania, 5,000 sensors, 28 AGVs. I don't know why AGVs are important, but hey, everybody throws AGVs, so I will throw AGVs, and 126 cameras for everything from employee safety to physical safety to monitoring the peripherals and so on and so forth, right? And operations of the network. So in those 5,000 sensors and capabilities, in an OT network, the IP addressing, the device management is critical. You cannot just go and say, I will actually connect it to a CPE and give it a 192 address, a local IP address, because that is not traceable. So it has to come from an OT pool. How would you do it in a 5G? 5G LAN, frame routing, multiple technologies that you can use, but you need to do those kind of stuff. But now just imagine somebody copied my SIM. Very easy, eSIM. Nowadays, very easy to copy, right? Somebody copies it, or if it's a physical SIM, it takes it out and puts it on some other device and makes a request, which is also very tangible. And it actually happened in my real life. In 2021, it actually brought down a factory for a week because we could not figure out how that thing came down, how the network came down. So we have a masquerading issue at that time. So thank God, in the networks, there are multiple ways to identify. Wi-Fi guys have an amazing technology with device identifiers, the security encryption protocols, and so on and so forth that we can. In 5G, we have Suki Gutties, we have number verification capabilities, we have all of stuff. In LTE, we can also do all of these capabilities as well. Somebody has a bi-weekly meeting. Sorry. Okay, here we go. So the first thing that we wanted to do and this was, by the way, on a live Orange network, which is a private network on their radio frequency, because in Europe you cannot have CBRS, so it was on their network. So we actually had to go and verify, is that network is that request from a legitimate request? How do we do that? Again, you cannot expect it to go and say, just because I have a soup of, I have no idea what happened, but it should come back soon. And I cannot expect my SCADA controller developers or PLC controller developers or my MES developers or my distributed control system developers or my warehouse management controller developers to actually have different things. If Wi-Fi do this, if that's how programmers work, right? So how can I provide a synergistic API for the network services we expose? So that's exactly what we did with Verizon, or sorry, with Orange, to actually expose us. So over here, we are actually making a call down to the network on a 5G side. We go and say, hey, are you a real, is it working? Yeah, I think it is. So if the traffic, is it a real sensor? If it is a real sensor, I need to do two things. So at this thing, it's just doing successfully able to reach the sensor. Actually, the first thing is, can I even reach the sensor before I can actually make a call? Then I need to verify, is it a real sensor? Then after I have figured out if it is a real sensor, I need to figure out, well, what the hell does it need? Does it need latency? Does it need bandwidth? Whatever I need, I need to get those services allocated to it. As I was having a discussion with somebody over the lunch, we can all do this by right engineering of the network. We can over-engineer the network. But the problem with over-engineering is it costs my customer money. If I can do it on runtime, it's better for them. It's better ROI because they can understand that I'm saving them money by not putting additional RUs. I'm saving them money by optimally utilizing the capability. So once that sensor was identified, it already went through the flow. What I did is basically, you know what? I know the location of that particular sensor. Do a geogrid, find the camera in that geogrid, and tell that camera to zoom over here in this location. And the camera can zoom in into whatever thing. And that's exactly what it was showing. It was all done by exposing Orange's network, albeit 5G, private 5G, on riding on top of the public 5G, by exposing the network services as nothing more than network API. That's what we believe. Now, if assume or imagine that same network API can handle Wi-Fi, can handle Zigbee, can handle Bluetooth, can handle any of those things, then you just took away that complexity or that excuse, I would say, not in complexity, that excuse from my PLC MES developer to not use network services and just continue using it as a file. Because once this network becomes an intelligent asset, that is where we make, all of us make money. Because now we have more than those 3 use cases. Now we have those 300 use cases that we can enable. Again, I was talking to somebody, if you really think about it, CBRS frequency, and I really love, by the way, OnGo guys. I think they are phenomenal. Without them, we couldn't have done any of the stuff that we do today. Right? So thank you for everything that you guys do. It's phenomenal, right? But if you really think about it, CBRS, say I got a 40 megahertz slice allocated to a radio. By physics, just because of the waves and everything, the way things work, maximum uplink I can get per radio is what? 600, maybe 1.5 gigabit. If I have 30 QC cameras now connected to it, so we talk about 5G being the pervasive connectivity. We talk about 5G being the highway. We talk about 5G having unlimited bandwidth. We all agree those are great marketing words. But when we actually have to realize a real manufacturing plan, and that's what our focus has been in Shavuot for a while now, since 2021, when you actually start enabling those real things, these real issues come. So when I have 50 QC cameras, all trying to stream 4K, that you do the video inference, which is sitting on the edge, I'm going to run into problems. So prioritizing application, prioritizing capability, prioritizing the structures is important for all of us. And that's what, for example, they were trying to do in Orange, in public network and private network, right? Where we actually were using NEPs and 33 interface. We hid the whole complexity by just providing them 5 APIs. And all of these 5 APIs were absolutely authenticated, secure, scalable APIs, which were working with the real network services in concert. And we could do, GMA is a great example on what we can do on the Open RAN consortium, right? Cisco Okay, Cisco is not a great example. Ethernet maybe is a great example of what we can do on 5G core kind of a stuff. LTE, there are a lot of EPCs out there. There are a lot of SCEFs out there which are in operations today. They're not going to rip them out, but there's money to be made with them because they cannot utilize it effectively from that perspective. So in our environment, what we typically find, and I think we are breaking this horse to death, it is not about one protocol. It is not about one network. It is going to be a diverse network. It is going to be an ecosystem and network. And as SIs, as the product providers, as the network element providers, as the guys who are trying to actually make money off the network, we need to make sure that we can actually enable all of those gateways. Again, I will give you a small little example. If my video inference engine for my QC is sitting in my edge, and my QC camera is trying to stream an uplink of, say, 4K, 1080p, pick whatever you want to do. If I'm trying to uplink that thing, and the edge is beyond private cloud kind of stuff. So it's not on-prem, it's off-prem, and a cloud, private cloud kind of stuff. The life does not stop at UPS. The life does not stop at wireless LAN controller. The life goes on to SD-WAN. The life goes on to MPLS, SMS, RVC. And as SIs, as a product, as a people who are trying to enable the manufacturing plants, we need to take those into account as well. So when we go in 5G world and we go and say, you know what, I can provide you network slice, or I can provide you APN for LTE, or I can actually provide you a MIMO beamforming or whatever it is, the SDRP management under Wi-Fi. It ends at WLC, it ends at EPC or UPF and so on and so forth. Is there a way for us to extend that life outside of that domain? Can I actually pass on that request of low latency to my app server? And if so, can I do it in a single way? So those are the kind of questions that we are running into, and that's what we are trying to do. So here's an example of a real use case. Again, I cannot beat the LG example. This is just a small little manufacturing plant. They do, the picture is wrong. Well, actually, picture is right. They do building material manufacturing, and they do paints. So if you have ever gone to Home Depot, even in the 51st state, and you buy Home Depot paint, chances are it's white labeled through these guys. If you're actually going to Sherwin Williams or something like that, chances are it's a white label paint. If you actually have put a shingles on your roof, chances are it's white label. So they are one of the biggest North American building materials provider. And in this particular case, they were actually looking at Wi-Fi 6, and it's a real story. I was not trying to bullshit over there when I said Wi-Fi 6 gigahertz is really something that we need to take into account from private wireless connectivity perspective, because wireless 6 gigahertz, not Wi-Fi 6, 6E and 7 with the 6 gigahertz frequency is actually a clean frequency, and they're looking at it as an extension, just a plain simple extension of their existing Wi-Fi. They know how to manage it. And you're absolutely right when we were talking about the lunchtime, getting somebody to learn how to manage a cellular network is a very complex thing. Try teaching an IT guy on how to manage a cellular network. You know, I actually had a hard time even in Nortel when I was doing R4, R5. I was the director responsible for IMS, and when I became the global CT for Juniper, I was actually running their entire MPLS network, teaching an enterprise customer on how to run a telco grade cellular network. It's a completely different domain. Sorry, sir. It's a balance right now. So right now, I can only speak for my deployment. I cannot speak for statistics like Ashish. Ashish is the master of stats. I'm guessing. I would say about 30% to 40% of them are carriers enabling private 5G networks today. The reason is the OT guys do not know how to manage the network. That's a simple thing. Cellular. Yes.
It depends on the region. If you go to APAC countries, then operators have a lot more control. on what they offer in terms of supporting. So operators have a much bigger say in the private network. Look up also a lot of operators in Bootcamp, because the fund service available for enterprises. Those operators have transformed themselves into forward technologies and MSPs. So there are operators who have taken that step. There is more separate business unit who is going after enterprise opportunities as an attack.
Yeah.
Now, under the board, I mean, this is, yeah, it's not, if you're think of, well, yeah, we don't say aside, I mean, we have nothing line between aside. Yeah, right, so somebody who is providing a network as a service. Managed services. Yeah, network as a service also has to context, right? The network as a service, from a perspective of, yes, I have a bigger network, I'm curious what my support to my network, that's one way of categorizing the service. Another is I'm building an infrastructure, whether it's either public or private cloud or it's all on premise, but still offering you a network as a service. And a lot of times when seeing network as a service is really promoted structure by cloud and actually having a proper service.
Yeah.
So regardless, right, the point is operators are operated, like you see a lot of independent MSP and SI getting that network service. There is going to be a lot of collaboration between operators and that lower players who are independent MSP. I do think somebody who is more aggressive, I mean, at the end of the day, who's figured out applications, devices, the network, and the whole outcome-based offering is for vendor battle with the operators or operators working somebody else or the but don't take operators like the operators. Well, like
MDNO, MNO.
it's hard to tell, but
You put this question on the enterprises, learn, figure out, then you go to the private.
Very nice.
Because it's sweet, it's sweet. And, you know, that's what we're doing today, is how do you educate them, bring together, right? But the opportunity to operate, it's have to send them on the room pipeline, and that's right? So, it is commonplace for a lot of IT to our clear network stuff, man, was way beyond Wi-Fi and like 5G. The question is, there's an opportunity for a lot of service providers to operate now.
yeah, because here's the whole business case. On the extent.
How you can set it, what technology, figure out what technology to use, but it's also, you gotta have a container. Right? When I operator's DNA is wired for making these things work in one. It's not wired for enterprise. At the same time, so the challenge for any of us is to trying to kind of learn that language and bridge that gap.
No, we did it. We did it. It's not easy.
Yeah.
But the appreciated customer, they say that they did it, and they could start working. And they say,
Yeah, so you see the cases.
We got a double click on that. What people do, right? So if you look at a large enterprise city, they run Wi-Fi. You have an idea of what radio is. You understand what physical wire is. You understand what routers is. You understand what switch is. What is it that they actually so bad? And from experience.
Oh, sorry, on the cellular side?
Well, that's what you think about 5G.
Yeah, so the cellular, the complexity comes down in everything related to, for example, frequency management, device management, SIM management, operations, right?
Okay, perfect.
So those are the kind of stuff which they struggle with today. That's why MSPs and service providers are very, very critical. That's why I think some of the service providers are actually, as Ashish rightly said, are now providing private 5G as a service kind of stuff too. T-Mobile is a great example. TFP provides a very phenomenal service on top of their dev edge and everything to actually provide those kind of capabilities out there. But the issue which comes down to is, I think I was talking to you about our good old days from telco. It's very simple to talk about ITIL versus FCAP. Two completely different beasts for those of you who have actually worked into the domain, right? Even a simple thing like APN management and network slice management is different than managing device QoS for Wi-Fi. This is actually making them learn new skill sets. And here's a problem. When I go to my manufacturing clients, and by the way, we have about 6 commercial deployments, we have about 15 pilots going on. Like we work with all kind of private and public providers out there, right? The issue that they're all come down to is my job, my whole factory relies on building shingles, drywall, paint. And you're telling me I now need to build a whole force which understands Bluetooth, Zigbee, LoRaWAN, Broken Ring, it's still alive, right? Or whatever else, right? It's like LTE, 5G. And not only that, then I go to, for example, ABB, Rockwell, who charts you were showing over here, or Schneider, or anybody else like that. And they go, now you're telling my guy who actually knows how to manage the controllers, shut the lines down, actually to send the directives for the manufacturing and so on and so forth, to learn, in order for them to just send a simple message, they need to know which protocol and which value they're talking about. Screw it, we're happy just using it as a pipe. And if they're using this as a pipe, there's no need for them to upgrade. The current networks work to a certain extent, right? So this is where we need, and the vision that Ashish was talking about, Industry 4.0, automation, all those 16, 17 circles coming together, those will not become a reality because they're still using, they're ignoring, not using, they're ignoring the most critical asset in my mind, because I'm a network geek, the network, right? In their equation right now. So we need to, in order for us to increase the adoption, increase the education, we need to make their life simple. We need to make them utilize the tools and the processes. I think one of the examples, the best example was, we did not, when we were talking about the armed forces, the Marine Corps, right? We did not change any processes. So the people who were 63 years old knew the same process as a 23-year-old who was just starting. As long as we don't change too much, these are lifelong manufacturing people, right? It makes us easy. So we need to work it out. And by the way, in
the chapter comment, I think what you do is upgrade enterprise edge, including 5G access, rather than the other way around. You send 5G, not dead end. So you actually upgrade the enterprise edge platform.
And then you slowly build it out.
You have 5G access included. So that's the way, because you have to take care of the legacy, all this Wi-Fi, whatever.
Absolutely. So there are multiple strategies, as Ashish keeps on saying. Every customer, unfortunately, is bespoke, right? And so we need to actually work together how we actually engage each and every customer. But the fact of life is, they're not going to buy whatever private wireless just for the sake of buying private wireless. They need to understand how it changes everything for them, and we need to make it easy for them to adopt and realize the benefit. And that's what I'm trying to.
So basically, what I see is the basically you have the same edge platform. You either automation or container. They are on the same platform, so you actually can access all those sensor data applications
In a common way.
Yeah,
in a common.
On the same level, 5G core on the same level on any other.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the difference.
Absolutely. And one of the problems of 5G, which never became reality, was NWDAF, where you can actually have non-5G accesses managed by the same core. That's still slow, right? So we need to have the fact that there are disparate network systems that they need to talk, and a PLC controller. So my PLC that I enable in this factory right now has 4 interfaces on it, and I need to make sure that if one of them goes down, the second one stays up, the second one goes down, the third one stays up, the fourth one, it's backup of backup of backup, but its PLC controller is talking one language. Send a message or whatever it is in the low level.
I think telecom has different terminology about the dominance. And what is, for
virtualization software, we're talking about high availability, but where the telecom talking about redundancy, due redundancy. So it's different level of security.
Again, what Jaspreet is talking about is actually, you got to ignore again, and if you look at, oh, there are 4 systems that will be redundant. That's not the point. The point is, doesn't matter which interface that it was.
It works
Here,
same.
the controller can send, I need connectivity.
Yeah.
What is that language that's saying, in one language, whether it was Wi-Fi, 5G, Modbus, whatever else, the programmer of that PLC will have to select, oh, on this interface, I'm going Wi-Fi, so I have to send a message in one way. On this interface, I'm going 5G, I have to send a message another way.
Yeah.
They have to send the message one way, and the system has to.
Then we need to figure out which one is the right interface for them to get.
But then, that is for integration of network in their application. They didn't have to change anything on their end.
And it's not only reliability, it is the determinism of the reliability. It has to be deterministic. They have an ability to support it.
Absolutely.
So that is, I think that is another problem that we have also like. What the molecular economy, we are only technology first thing can be support that they want and still make it have.
And becoming, because that becomes a fast. That's again, another thing of which is right, network services are exposing itself and bringing that level of awareness to the application. The application becomes smart enough to say, okay, I need to have this SLA. You can, I just need that. You determine whether I'm going to go to the Wi-Fi network for this or I'm going to do a 5G network.
It's like admission control, right? You are a user, you're trying to get the service. And you say, no, I want the service with X, and that's perfect, and I'll bring in the X download. If you can support that as well, then you say, yeah, I can allow you, you are admitted.
Yeah.
That's the assurance that you need to provide it and prepare.
Then we need to provide it not for OT operator. We need to provide it for OT application developer as well.
As a service provider, so service provider owns the SLA. If an enterprise is given the responsibility of managing the activity, putting us right, one MSP. If an MSP says, I will manage your network and I will guarantee that your return fee, return, delay, whatever, you will be supported for your application. You bring your application, like CY, UD, VY,
I'll give you another good example. In a real practice department that I was talking about, where they masqueraded as them, a heat sensor, a simple heat sensor. So what they were doing is they're putting up a fiberglass panel, it's going up on waves, they're blasting lines and stones and blah, blah, blah. So a heat sensor went up. Over here, I will show one heat sensor. When the heat sensor went up, 40 heat sensors went away. So it's not just one, right? The heat kind of breaks. And then certain network, Wi-Fi being one of them, Bluetooth being another one. The waves start destroying. Because of heat. So then the question comes out is that sensor at that given time, that root cause sensor, not the additional 39 sensors. How do you give that a priority? How does the controller give that sensor a priority? To get the lowest latency call to make that thing up. So that cannot be engineered.
you need to be priority aware, you need to be time aware, and you need to have long wave vision.
On what network?
That is the solution we bring.
Exactly, right? So those are the kind of things that we need to work out.
One thing. Valid. It's still over engineering the network. Right? So again, I think the problem in all of these scenarios is that you look at saying, okay, the MSP is providing an SLA. Based on what? MSP is providing an SLA based on now saying I'm going to put this much bandwidth in, I'm going to put this much network in, but 80% of the time the network is not being used, right? But some other application is set up, how do I dynamic it? What dynamic is something?
And that's why and but it may have to be the better.
Very often, I mean, just wondering how to send the content.
I can wrap it up very quickly. You have a quick question? Yeah, so that's why I like that title of the conference, which is about providing project line or project network to the manufacturing. It's not about 5G. 5G just happens to be one of the many technologies that are in our armor that are made. Right? And so when I work, for example, with Schneider, the PLC controller, they're not too care about what networking for it. They just want to make sure that they can get the lowest latency when they. And then when I have 50, 50 cameras, they don't care. And everything is good, which is 60, 70, 80% of the time. But when they have that color mismatch, they want that okay. So, and they don't care whether it's on this or that or that. They want to make one call and everything is done. We really have it, yeah. Yeah, so we work with utilities as well. And it's a similar problem. It's a similar problem out in the airport, it's a similar problem in logistics, it's a similar problem in arena, it's a similar problem everywhere. It's just a sheet money that's the focus on manufacturing.
You go through your API, right?
So we have a platform which actually works on the cell phone to partner company, including GWDL. So we actually do these companies, they have demonstrations and so support on the way to statistics and TLS. We do 5G, the TP, Wi-Fi. And we are partnering with almost some, because there are millions of network required. Some of the network required that we attract their services out. And then we provide physical API. And that is my next shot actually. But what do we do? Is after all the talk that we are actually the programmable network, which actually provides that API capability output, right? And in the spirit of time, we work on top of all kind of a networks. We provide a single interface out. So our goal is, and lucky for us in 3GPP or in GSMA in particular, there's a standards body which came around. I'm pretty sure you guys have worked with. It's called Kamara, which started putting the capability out for us. This is just a point. This is all we have talked about it, right? Oh, this is Kamara API, kind of. Did we put that, Ramesh, in there? Oh, okay, cool. Sorry. So what we do is we do aggregation and simplification of the APIs to be provided out there. But what we have proven is that we can actually be not only the network effective provider, no offense, they are easier to find. The application side, the real-time application side, they're the harder ones to find and to convince. The Rockwells, the Schneiders, the ABBs, the Bosches of the world to actually start using us so that they can actually, and not us, there's actually standards. For example, airline industry have their own standards. Manufacturing team is actually trying to come up with their own standards of how to make the calls and so forth. So they can actually build to those APIs and the orchestration of the network can happen through them. And I apologize for taking so much time. I hope I didn't put anybody to sleep. If I did, time to wake up.
All right, thank you, Arpit. We are way behind time, and my apologies for not breaking these discussions because we really want to. Fine, Toby. And you walk in. Just introduce yourself and wait.
I'm Mike Owen. I'm the CTO of Bearcom. A lot of interesting conversations today. We're gonna speed this up because we've hashed a lot of what we were going to cover already about 100 times. We'll beat the horse a little bit more, but I think it's good. It's been a lot of interesting conversations. Really exciting to kind of go through this and turn it over to Ian.
I'm Ian Watson, VP of Operations for Aura Wireless, and you might have heard us on the side say, what about Wi-Fi? What about Wi-Fi? We started out as a Wi-Fi antenna company, and we've moved into CBRS. We offer our same antenna technology in the CBRS space. So we actually are kind of that intersection of the Venn diagram of Wi-Fi and CBRS. So that's kind of what we bring to the table. That's kind of the thought process that we keep going through is, why throw out the baby with the bathwater? Use the bathwater, a couple more times if you can. So our antenna is a phased array antenna, and it's will either plug into a CBRS base station and a Wi-Fi AP, and then we have our own Wi-Fi only products as well. We do have an integrated platform that will do both Wi-Fi and CBRS.
So yeah, so this is like thinking about it from the executive level, right? We talked a lot about how we go through this. And when you're targeting and you're trying to like, you know, win that business, you're trying to drive that customer, you're trying to do it. You know, you're really looking at the decision makers, and that's where you need to focus, where you're thinking, where you're going, right? And so is private cellular a good fit for your business? What does everything come down to? It's always about, right, James Carville? It's the economy, stupid. It's always ROI. You know, think about it as you're working with that executive and they have to go to their CFO and they go in there and say, this is cool, we need to buy it. Right? You'll get thrown out of the office so fast, it's not even funny. So you need to have that mindset when you're working with those people, right? When you're trying to come up with that case, there's thousands of use cases on how to sell private cellular, how to get this into the marketplace, how to do it. There's tons of use cases. But if it doesn't do one of these three things, they're never going to buy it. Right? Safety sells. That's the easiest selling. Man, if you can sell it based on safety, because it's hard to put a dollar amount to safety. Right? Any company that's ever got a lawsuit because of an accident, there's no price tag on that, right? But what you're really trying to drive is reducing costs and increasing productivity. So you got to keep that mindset when you're working with that person. You may have that use case, but can you turn that use case into something they can take into that CFO to actually sell? There's been a lot of great examples on here that people probably didn't even realize they were putting there. Now I'll give JMA a ton of credit. That little slide with the Humvees, people can understand that, right? When you're selling and you're trying to show how it's going to reduce costs or how it's going to, the simpler you can make that point, the better off you are. So that's what you have to be thinking about as you're doing this. There's been a lot of them where they've shown, hey, we've increased productivity by this, we've decreased defects by that, right? We've reduced costs, we've increased productivities. But as you're working that use case and as you're working that with the customer, think about that the entire time. How can I help give that customer stats or information or something to feed, just like if you were having to take it into your CFO? Because that's really what's going to help you win that business. And that's what you need to think about. There's tons of them. I can give you use cases across all of these where private 5G covers all of this stuff, or 4G, LTE, whatever you want to say. There's tons of them. But a lot of times we just talk about the problem that you're solving and not the benefit that you're giving them by solving that problem. And they can't always put that together in their mindset, right? They'll go, hey, I just need to do this. Right? But they can't equate that to how do I turn that into a story that I can tell to actually bring that benefit. I don't know if you want to add some more on that.
Well, yeah, I did, because people have mentioned it quite a few times, is they'll come to you with their story. We want to solve X. And when you solve X, they go, oh, well, I've got Y and Z and 1, 2, 3 and X, Y, and keep going down the line of all the other things that, because you've solved X, have cropped up or shown themselves. So the encouragement when you're selling, whether it's Wi-Fi, CBRS, just wireless in general, the encouragement is always to learn what your customer does so that you can assist them, because you're coming at it from a completely different way than they are. They've solved the problem. They're manufacturing this widget. Well, you're allowing them to manufacture this widget, but you're saying, okay, well, you can have all your assets coming in, you can maintain your assets, you can keep your costs down over here, you can take your widget and you can get it out the door and start shipping it in much faster, lower labor costs, all these kinds of things that affect your ROI. But you're coming at it from a networking perspective. You're you're the toolbox that they're bringing to solve that problem that they've ultimately got. So you're always going to come at it from a different perspective than they are, but do actually research the company that you're going into work with to know, and not just the industry, that company, because that company is unique. It is a company because it does something different than any other company. Otherwise, it would be another company. So it is unique. It's got something unique about it. It's got the special sauce or whatever you want to call it that makes them them. And that's what you ultimately have to dig in and find out. And if it's something that the wireless can assist with, great. If it's, management or something else, then, let them do that. But that's all I wanted to add in.
Yeah, no, and he's absolutely right what he's saying, right? You have to know your customer. You have to learn your customer. You have to understand that pain point. So the LG factory, I'm super familiar with the LG factory. I've actually been in it many a times, right? The big problems they were having with their AMRs, AGVs was when they lost Wi-Fi, they just drive home because they don't know what to do, they go home. That's why productivity was going down, because as soon as they lost Wi-Fi, they just drive home. So that was the whole goal to fix that, right? But that was measurable. And believe me, LG, the Koreans and those guys, they measured that. They can give you an actual amount that it is. And we knew what it was doing. And as that whole deployment was done, and yes, I know there were some issues. We didn't do the cabling. Go there with that. We weren't the cabling company. But as they went through that, but that's what they were doing. And that's how they focused. And that's why they made the decision to spend multi-million dollars to deploy a network, because they knew what the ROI would be, because they worked through it. And so that's really what you have to do with your customers, right? Again, we're focusing on talking to at the executive level. You get down to his level, and he's doing the geeks and the nuts and bolts and using MQTT, and you can make everything talk to everything. And you just need one network. Yeah, that is. It's easy, but I mean, that's the thing you don't want to do, is go down that path at the executive level, because you will lose them so fast. Now, do you need to have the ability to talk at that level? Back to know your audience, right? At the right audience, you want to speak that, because they'll probably go, hey, you're going to have to talk to my IT director and have them. And then you may need to get into that level. But when you're talking at the executive level, remember, this is all that's important. Because if I'm going to make a decision, it's based on one of these. Safety is easy. So.
I agree.
Okay. We're used to do the time. Man, we've been beating this horse so hard. I want to go with this. Which religion's better, Catholics or Methodists? Right? Don't go there. Both of them get you to God. That's all that matters, right? When you get into this question, and I've had this many times come up, again, talking at the executive level, think about what you're trying to get and what you're trying to move forward. Never play one against the other. It's like never talk bad about the other one, because you have no idea that other person may be a Methodist and you're talking Catholic. And what you've just done is you've lost that person, because you will never convince them otherwise. You never will. So you want to kind of always talk about the strengths, about what you're trying to drive, right? And I'm talking about on the private cellular network. I'm talking about security. I'm talking about mobility and coverage. I'm talking about latency and that thing. I'm talking about all the positive stuff. If they get into this, don't be afraid to talk about the positive stuff about Wi-Fi, because I guarantee you they know it already, right? Cost of ownership, the easy button. Sorry, I'm still some of your thunder.
Oh, no. You were, and so, Wi-Fi is ubiquitous. Everybody knows Wi-Fi. Even people who aren't tech savvy know Wi-Fi and what it is. So, instead of talking, okay, well, your private 5G and your Wi-Fi is bad and it's over here, why don't you say, okay, well, if you do a combined system and look at it in a holistic approach, look at it and say, okay, if you bring on a 5G wireless system, that will free up your 2.4 or your 5 gigahertz bandwidth, where it was completely crowded before, you had no use for it. Now you can actually identify services that can work in there. And in the Wi-Fi space, they're doing this right now with 6G. You mentioned 6G. It's completely open because nobody's using it. But it was the exact same thing when they introduced 5G. It was completely open because nobody was using it. And 5G got really congested. They said, oh, well, let's go to 6G now. And it's still going to be the same thing. And the other thing you're going to run into is all of this real legacy items. Real legacy items that you will never get onto a 5G network. And real legacy items that they've identified are core to their business. So you're going to have to figure out how to keep some things that are core to their business, even though you're bringing them into, 21st, 22nd, 23rd century, if you will, or progressing their wireless network. And that's, and I agree, like everybody who's saying here, wireless network instead of private LGE or private CBRS or anything like that. That's what should be pushed. To understand what's still there, still needs to be used, but we can add this new thing. And I've got one anecdote. So it's a Wi-Fi anecdote, but it's applicable. We went into a train company, and they had 36 access points covering their entire terminal area. Well, we took it down to 9 access points with our particular technology, but the story is not about our technology. The story is about that company has to use these particular APs because they're industrial level. And oh, by the way, their buddy Cisco discontinued them. So they now were able to recover those extra 17 APs and move them throughout other terminals that they're able to actually expand their coverage to. So they're able to recover it. So it's an anecdote of what can be done with Wi-Fi. And when you introduce something new, you don't have to throw away the old. And invariably, you won't be able to throw away the old because the people that have been there the longest are expert in the old. And if you start coming down and tearing down their territory, those are some of the decision makers that you're going to make really mad.
Exactly. So the point trying to get across with this is the entire discussion that happened this morning or all morning about this whole thing between Wi-Fi and 5G. You don't want to go down that path with the customer because there will be customers that it is religion, right? And you'll never convince them otherwise. And all you're doing is losing a sale, trying to make a technical point that's totally not important because it really isn't. Because ultimately what you're trying to do is show them the ROI on how your solution is going to be the best thing the company ever invested in. So it was a great discussion, and it's great to do it amongst peers. You start doing it with your customer, and you're going to lose them. So try to avoid it. Always talk positive about either, because I could sit here and argue with myself for like all day long, and I could jump on one side and then jump on the other. Oh no, point counterpoint, right? And we can all do it, and you were doing it very well. And you guys can do it also, right? And the thing about it is sometimes you'll get your facts wrong. That's when it really gets dangerous because they may know more about it than you do. And you'll say something and they'll go, no, you're wrong. And now you just lost credibility. So, next one. So this was another one. It was kind of interesting because we just started kind of coming up and talking about this just a few minutes ago. And we talk about, hey, what makes up a 5G network? What's all this stuff? And the whole thing about it is it's like managing a network. Again, we're talking at the executive level, right? So what's going to be important to them? And then back to that total cost of ownership. What is it going to be? They look at something like this and they go, oh my God, what's a 5G network? It's cellular. My company doesn't do so. My IT department doesn't do cellular. That's one of the things you want to stay away from. Don't not use terminology cellular. I think I should change it from private cellular network. It just needs to be a private network or something, or just you know, we got to work on that terminology. Because when you put the word cellular in there, instantly their IT department looks at it and goes, I don't know cellular. I can't run this network. So then the executives are like, well, how am I going to run this network? If I bring this in here, who's going to do it? My IT people just said, I can't do cellular. We don't know cellular. So then you get into, well, we'll get a managed service contract. Oh, great. Now I got to spend all this money on CapEx, and now I've got this OpEx that's going to come tailing right along with that, because now I've got to outsource the management of this network. And by the way, my IT department doesn't understand it. So guess who's in charge of network security? IT department. What are you going to connect this into? Their network. So this was, there was a player in the space a while back. They had a different model of doing this, and they did an overlay onto a customer network. Worst thing in the world you could do. Because the customer's looking at it going, I don't know what your little black boxes do. I don't like them. So now you got the IT department complaining about what you're trying to sell. Who are they complaining to? Their directors. Who's their directors? The people that are going to be purchasing the equipment. So we got to work on the terminology and the understanding of what the network is. I don't know if there's something you want to add on that further.
Yeah, so what I was going to add to that is always remember that ROI always includes CapEx and OpEx. You've got to look at CapEx and OpEx. And I guarantee you pull any of the large enterprise companies out there right now, they hate subscription services with a passion, and they work to get away from them. So if you're coming in and saying, I'm not a subscription service, but I'm going to manage it, and you're going to pay me over time to do it, you're a subscription service. So Dave, you know, that's another level of complexity that you're going to run into if you try to go kind of the MSP route, and you're not just, and you know, if you don't have that in your back pocket, okay, well, then you have to be recommending to the enterprise, how are they going to do it? So you either have to, as an SI, you have to know, I'm going to steer them to an MSP, which they may not like, or I'm going to steer them to, you know, a fixed cost in their company, which they also won't like, because it's all going to go back to the original slide of it's going to eat into the ROI, because now they're spending more than they originally thought. So, do you have a question?
Yeah,
sure.
Besides the CapEx and OpEx, can you tie the ROI to productivity, don't tie to loss of network time?
Yeah, so that's the whole goal of what you're trying to do, right? Is you could say, hey, you want to do it with the managed service, and if you can tie it back to, say, if you're spending X dollars, you know, to deploy the system, or let's say to run the system monthly, but the ROI on that is your downtime just went from, you know, 20% downtime to 10% downtime, which was an increase of X numbers, and then conflate the two. I guarantee you go into any CFO's office and say, hey, I can spend $10 to make $100. They're going to let you spend the $10.
Just
right?
make sure you can get them $100.
Right. Now, if you go in there and say, hey, I'm going to spend $100 to make $10, they're going to kick you out.
Right.
Right? But it's building that model. The one thing that we've really worked towards is trying to demystify this. Because everybody looks at it as, oh, it's so complex, so difficult to operate, we can't operate it. Our IT department isn't smart enough. Really and truly, they are. They just need to understand it, and you got to get out of the telco terminology, right? Because when you really look at it, they already know this side. They already know this side. It's these three in the middle. Well, you take a RAN network. I mean, once you pretty much turn up that RAN network and you get it engineered to what it's going to be, it pretty much operates itself. But there's really all you're looking for is alarms and troubleshooting, right? And it's really not as complicated as it needs to be. And can they do this with APs? And it depends on the complexity of the network you sell them, right? you got the, the spectrum of it. You got the Ericsson Nokias at the top, and then you got all the way down to the ones that are more just access points. What your customer can't afford to do, because a customer could be LG, huge customer, they can afford a full-blown, complex system where they can do managed services because that makes sense for them. You may have a customer that's on the smaller end. Well, if you start to get the RAN network that's more, the airspan, the buy cells, those type of things where it's more of an access point network, it's pretty much turn it on and forget it. And if you have trouble with it, it's pretty much you just replace it. And you don't really have to go in there and mess with it. Right? So it's pretty simple. The evolved packet core. Now, getting into the 5G or 5GSA core, right? Getting into that, getting the network slicing and those type of things, that's a little bit more complex, right? Doing QoS, like Salona's made an incredible interface on their, on their just standard EPC core for doing QoS. So that it makes it easy to do that. A lot of that's not hard to learn. The biggest thing that they deal with in the core is user management. It's SIM card management. But every IT guy in the world, if they've been in IT, they know Active Directory, they know user management, they know how to do it. Once you pretty much explain to them how to go through it, and they understand that relationship between the end user device and the SIM card and what that means in the core, they pretty much get it. It's not that difficult. That's really what they're dealing with. Most cores, again, once you build up that network in there, you don't really ever mess with it. They operate really well. So it's kind of demystifying this is what you really need to work on. We've worked with quite a few customers that they operate their own networks now. We've gone through it. We've trained them on how to do it. The thing that they deal with more than anything else, it's the same thing they always deal with, right? It's always, hey, blah, 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 their cradle point's not working, or this person's UE is not coming online, or it's not, need a better antenna.
Oh, yeah.
Right? In a fixed wireless. Yes, sir. No, they did not. They started out not even knowing what a cellular network was. And the one customer I'm talking about right now, they're using it for fixed wireless access. And so they operate it's a tribal nation. And so they operate it as their own service provider to the tribal nation. And they actually run the network themselves. We provide tier 2 support. The biggest things we deal with is, again, back to this, it's always this. Or they've had a few storms where we've had some cabling come out or APs on the towers. Other than that, really there hasn't been that much to do with it. They know how to do all the user management. They know how to provision and give out a device. And then, they give it out to the tribal member, they take it to their house, they turn it up, or they go to their house and help them turn it up. So what I get at more than anything is when you think about what you're doing with your customers, you really need to help them understand. And I always get back to that word cellular is the biggest nightmare word. Yes.
And that you actually running a private network and a service provider environment. The issue which we have run into when you go to manufacturing, when I was having a branch staff, right, is that everything is synchronized to, for example, PC.
Right.
Grandmaster Flash is being 5.7, we have PSN components, we have various capabilities on the core, UPS, radio frequencies have to be done.
Yeah, I haven't touched on that part of it, yes.
And then they have 5GC instead of ATC, but still, it's a 5G core.
Right.
And packet core, right? So they have this complexity, and when they try to map it to ITIL processes, it doesn't map. Right? So that's where we see a little bit of an issue. If there's a way for us to message that, hey, OSS, BSS, FCAP, right?
Right.
It's similar to ITIL3, and here's a mapping of ITSM, for example, then it becomes easy for them to understand. But that is a very complex problem which our team gets solved.
Yeah, so So what we've done to help try and get there faster is when you start to engineer the network, the customer should be part of it. The customer's IT people should be part of that network engineering. They participate because what you have to do as you start going through that model, you have to start explaining all this to them. They start to get a better understanding of what those functions are within there. And they start to participate in it. They're really, IT people are geeks, right? You're a geek, right? You would, if I was to say, hey, look, you're going to help me come in and provision this and work through this, you'd be all over it, wouldn't you? Most IT people will be that. You know, that's at that, when you get into that level. At the executive level, what you want to do is remove that fear and say that people can be trained on how to do this. That you can go through, they can learn this. It's not as everybody just looks at it and says, oh my God, I can't do it.
It is not part of teaching or learning. For example, teachers in the end, people manage fiber all the time in the network, right? Good old days, gone. ATM rail delay, we used to manage those.
Oh, yeah, believe me, I know. I was there. I was in the hotel too.
You can manage all that, you can manage. I think it is just a comprehension.
That's what I'm getting, is try to take the scare out of it.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. As soon as you say it's a cellular network, people get nervous.
Actually, to be honest, I don't think it's the word cellular that is country, how we marketing.
Yeah,
The value of, so I got to do this with you.
right,
Because it is complex.
right. And that's what we try to, we're like,
Right.
hey, I don't want to do this.
Right, again, everybody tries to sell the value.
Right.
Right, so that, if your value is then providing, I'm gonna manage it for you, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna sell them complexity. Right, if your value is about getting them to it up, no matter what, right? 80% of the time, they're gonna say, what you manage. But at the end of the day, right, if you do provide them, it's
Right.
the point, you gotta get that fear out, it's not that talented, it's not that difficult.
Yeah, so the other thing to consider is,
Complexity, even when you're managing it, you feel, right? Because you don't want them to think complex. I mean, you said, this is how I can make it easy custom for you.
Yeah.
Or make it simplified, use the KISS method, right?
Yep.
And because if you, like Mike's saying, if you have that, I don't understand, too complex, it's too heavy, right? So probably just can stop listening at all. So the simplicity and the ease of it, working with them is worth a lot.
well, that's the other reason you want them there as part of the integration process. Because now they're buying in. Now they're willing to learn because you're being inclusive of them. You're not coming in and saying, we're gonna set this up and there you go, and we're outdoor, you can call us for tier 2 support, but you're good over here. That doesn't work. The more complex it gets. But if you bring them in, the other reason to bring them in, you're not gonna know every single one of the little intricacies that's going on in that manufacturing plant. Those IT guys will know, well, that's a complete dead zone, or, they just, their day-to-day life in the, or just, even if they don't work there physically, communicating with the people that do, they know what's going on in that plant. They will assist you in some of the gotchas that you would run into if you were just trying to do it without their buy-in and their integration in the overall system. So that's buy-in from the top all the way to the bottom has to happen. Otherwise, it's software, it's a process, and I've seen it because it happened to me. Goes on a shelf and they continue to do it the way they want to do it, no matter what. They're writing on paper and bringing it in, typing it in on a computer. And they bought this. They don't use it. And then management comes down and goes, why don't you use it? We bought it. This works. We know it could work.
How many of you have a friend that you never use?
That's getting real personal. It's too soon. Too soon. I mean, January was just around the corner. Don't start it yet. Give us time. We got until like August, right?
So the last part we'll touch on real fast, and then I'm gonna leave it here. I want to talk about the staff.
Okay.
Yeah, we won't go through the rest of the slide. The SAS is the one part where you truly need to help the customer understand. Right? There's one thing about a CBRS network, it probably takes more RF engineering than a regular network does. Because you have this whole complexity of incumbents, PALs, GAA, you have, the DPAs, you have all these things that are part of it. You gotta have heartbeats, right? I know you brought up heartbeat before. The thing that fixes heartbeat, man, On Go Alliance and a bunch of us, I know I lobbied the FCC or the NTIA about that heartbeat to get that extended because that was just a nightmare when you're indoors and you're not going to affect anybody, even if you're in a DPA or even if you're in an incumbent zone, you're in an indoor environment. Why do I got to do this handshake, every 5 minutes? It's technically what it is. It's every 4 seconds, and you're doing every 30 seconds. And after 2.5 minutes, you had to go off the air, right? And that was crazy. And so there was a ton of lobbying done. Now, I don't know if anybody ever knows why that heartbeat's around. It's a presidential act. The president has to have the authority to take over any RF spectrum in the United States on a given notice. That's why that whole heartbeat exists and why the SAS exists. So they can take over that spectrum at any time. Yeah, we fought that one out. But you have to, yeah. Yeah, right, exactly, right, because FirstNet was a great idea until they gave everybody FirstNet. But the SAS is what you really get, really with the executives, because their biggest fear is my system's going to be turned off arbitrarily by the government. Everybody trusts the government, right? And even though the SAS is privately run, it's still technically, it all exists because of the government, right? But when you're dealing with manufacturing, especially when you're dealing with that indoors, you can tell them it's pretty much, it is pretty reliable. Again, now they fixed a lot of the ESC network or the ESCs, and they fixed them. We have no more of that. Hey, when they shut off everything in the entire country, I don't know if y'all remember that one a couple of years ago. That was pretty cool. But the other thing is you got to explain to them that you have the RF engineering experience on how to plan around all this, right? If you understand it, right? Where are the incumbents? I know what part of that 1.5 or that 150 megahertz are the incumbents in? Lower 100. What's the most they'll ever turn off coming in? You said it earlier, it's 10. So if I have something in that lower 100 and I'm in that incumbent area, right? Then I know that doing channel planning is important. I may put something in the lower 100s, but I better make sure I put something else in the upper 50. Right? Where do DPAs hit? I know. The opposite. DPAs are the upper 50. So you got to plan for these things, right? But DPA are very established zones. And I don't think a DPA's ever actually turned up. I think they have one a couple of times by accident, but I don't know if they've really ever done it. But DPA zones are very specific. And they took them from huge to real small. It used to be the entire city of Dallas, actually all of North Texas, was a DPA. That's crazy. Right? And why? Because Raytheon has a factory that they build radar systems. So that was a DPA zone, and that's in North Dallas. But then they made like 300 miles. It's like all of North Texas. Well, they've shrunk that down now to just that area. And the reality is, you pretty much get advance notice if they're going to turn up any of that radar system. But you have to plan for it. But what I'm getting at is you need to explain to the customer that there is a way through RF engineering to make this whole frequency set that you're using in CBRS completely reliable. But it takes some planning. So demystify that whole thing, because we always used to get, and even LG started there, I don't know how many phone calls I was on with the Koreans where they were saying they can turn our system on. And we were trying to go through the whole, there's a way to RF plan this system so they don't. Now, the heartbeat was the one that we had to eventually get fixed, but that was, they fixed that now. So those are just the yellow areas. I'm gonna quit doing the rest of it so we can make up a little bit of time here. Any questions? Perfect.
Any Wi-Fi questions?
All right, thanks a lot, everybody. Great.
That's you, right?
Hi, Todd. Come over. It's 1:30, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's actually only 1:25. We gave you 5 minutes.
All right.
Great.
Where's the click me button?
This one.
All right. So I want to talk about Wi-Fi today.
Yeah, exactly, right?
So good stuff, an exciting morning and afternoon of discussion and topics and debates. So many of you might have known me from JMA Wireless. I'm about the third week into being part of Halo Network. So enjoying a very different environment focused on less about being an OEM and a vendor and more about trying to figure out services to deliver into customers. I spent about 10 years at JMA, really went there to found the idea of building a virtualized brand. That's where it started, and developed and worked with the world of CBRS and private networks and building stuff there. When you speak about networks, yeah, I got deeply involved in many of them. You know, you mentioned the heartbeat, a crazy one. You know, I worked on a project some of you may or may not be aware of that. You could not have the network shut down because they don't like it when you have to stop the Super Bowl because the coaches can't talk. And therefore, we not only needed to get rid of this issue of the heartbeat, which was the first time we ever got a waiver from the FCC for that, we had to build redundancy in the network. Someone talked about 7-9. How much time in a year can be down doing 7-9? Any numbers? 3.15, I think, to be specific. It's not enough time. How much time did we allow sideline communications to be down? Less than 1 second. That's what we did. All right. A little more than 7-9s, right? But it took redundancy and an architectural thought of solving the problem. All right. So the key that I think, threading through a lot of the discussions that you heard, particularly over the last couple of presentations, is you really got to understand the problem customer. You really got to understand their business. You're going to run into people. I would challenge the argument that you hand off to anybody as a generalization, because you're going to find IT organizations that will never have a clue. Sideline communication, never had a clue. Thought they would, never had a clue. Thought it entirely other. Okay. You'll have others that will study it. We all know some people are very technically inquisitive, and new technology comes out, they will go study and learn shit. You get others who done it fine. I'm not going to learn anything new. I deploy Wi-Fi now. And that's the way it is. That's what we deal with, right? When I last put together this, it was about the private cellular ecosystem. So, you know, given I've known kind of the audience more in this dialogue, I probably would have had different slides, but I'm going to talk about it and go through it anyway in 2 major buckets, because I think they're really important to understand. The infrastructure ecosystem, because this is an ecosystem of itself. And I'll call it an iteration of one of the last slides you had up with the different private wireless components, but I'll open the curtains a little bit deeper for everybody. And then the use case ecosystem. The importance here is that the one on the left is what gets you the order, not the one on the right. And funny, a lot of times I talk to people and I say, nobody's going to write you a check just to fit 3.5 gigahertz in the air. What am I going to do with it? One of the most common questions whenever I talk to somebody who's trying to figure out whether they should put private 5G in is, well, what do I use it for? Right? It isn't obvious. Remember, Wi-Fi had how many decades of evolution for people to learn and for it to be refined into simplicity. What is, OnGo Alliance, Kurt, is what, 5 years old-ish, right? Hardly anything since its inception. Now, this is very much like your diagram, but a little bit more detail. And a couple things on this. These are all functions you need, right? Sometimes I call it, well, you call it the anatomy of your private wireless network. I would tell you from experience that turning on CBRS radio frequency inside of a building is easy. It's 10% of the work, 20% of the work. You know what 80, 90% of the work is? Getting the networking to work. Because I just stuffed a layer 3 networking environment in the middle of what they think is going to work like their layer 2. Fix that. All right. Not for the faint of heart. So the other piece of this, and I'll go through some, just really the highlights of this. You see a firewall in there. Now, many people, we talk about putting in private wireless networks, don't even talk about firewall. Why do I put a firewall in? As soon as you say you're going to attach this thing to their private local area network with all their private stuff on, guess who shows up in the room? A CSO, the chief security officer. And then he starts to drill you with questions about how you're going to protect their network against a cybersecurity attack. And if you don't understand how to address those questions and show them that this network infrastructure you're going to put in is protected, it's going to be a short day. Because they won't let you put it in. Okay? Trust me, been through it. Now, a couple other aspects of this. One is Mocking gateway. Everybody knows Mocking topic, right? It's hot thing about coverage. Everybody, the big elephant in the room is, oh, well, we can do AT&T, we can do T-Mobile, but somebody else hasn't really joined them yet. And yes, it's an ongoing thing in our industry. Will it ever happen? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. Some say it will, some say they've done it. It's not commonplace. You can't go pull it off the shelf at Walmart tomorrow, all right? So it's not that easy. But it is a separate set of functions. And as much as well, let me step back. I would tell you that going a private 5G or private cellular network is not for the faint of heart. It is not easy. Now, some people are making it easier. Alone has done a good job at focusing on making life easy. All right. But is it ready for your average IT guy just to take over and do it? I would question that. Right. And it might be out of the box if you're doing a couple APs. The famous ones I always know, especially when we were doing VRAN stuff, is, oh, I got it all working in software. Okay, how many UEs are connected actively pushing full data streams on your VRAN? Well, I just have it in a lab with one connected right now. One or two UEs connected to a RAN going to 1,000 or 10,000, going from an AP chipset in a small area to an entire factory with 100 of them dealing with handovers and sign-off are totally different animals. And if you just do the small ones, tough to stay in business. Okay. Slide play. This is the way it starts to look when it gets simpler. But there's trade-offs. Now you mentioned somewhere in somebody's slide you had a RAN and radios versus a small cell. And both exist, both are merited with their own goods, bads, and ugly. But you have to just go in with your eyes open if you're going to be in the business of operating the service. You have to understand the anatomy of what you're working on. Male, female. So know the difference of what you're dealing with here. Small cells can be great and easy to deploy. Plug them into an Ethernet PoE network. Sounds simple. Remember, if you cover a big area with a bunch of them, and I got 50 little APs, that's 50 base stations. That's a handover that's happening all the time on your UE. It better work well. Handovers represent handover time, okay? Base stations that are independent base stations are their own sectors, represents sign-off issues between each base station. You better understand that, right? Networking it's funny, you put together an ecosystem and you've got a RAM, you've got radios, SIM cards, you get your SaaS relationship going, you get your TCIs so they can actually register CBSEs. But I need Ethernet switches. I got to connect everything, so, right? I got servers, controllers, other things I might put in the infrastructure. The other piece many of you know of or hear of is O-RAN. So now what has been a trunk call to a radio is starting to become an O-RAN interface. Or at a minimum, an Ethernet switch with power over Ethernet for the APs. But guess what else does it need to do? You can't just go by any PoE switch. It better support the PTP timing, or you won't have tight enough timing to the base station for it to work, period. Period. Okay? So these little subtleties make a difference in the anatomy as to whether the thing works well or doesn't. Okay, so you got this piece, but let's then say that's infrastructure ecosystem. Now I'm moving fairly fast for this. It's a little bit fun. And if you have questions on any of that stuff, happy to go to the stupid detail on it. If I take infrastructure ecosystem and look on the left, that's the one that is really exciting. Remember what I said is on the right, this is the reason if I'm an IT guy, I would buy a private wireless network. If you don't figure out the left, forget about selling the right. Right? And even if the left is just for mocking, that is a use case. Is it enough of a use case? That's debatable. Depends on how important it is to the enterprise. All right. Let's look at the use case ecosystem. Now, the network becomes a means to an end. This is a really high level chart. And as we were talking about capabilities, use cases, I kind of zoom back from what you'll hear every large organization doing. They're all trying to create what we've heard many times through the discussions here, efficiency. Your point about if you can't find ROI, it's going to be a tough sell, 100% spot on. But finding that ROI is not easy either, right? Because you have to get information about what their business is. You got to find out where their pain points are. Where do they have problems in? Half the time they don't know. All right. If you don't figure out how to ask the right questions, it's very difficult to know if you're going to have an offering that provide ROI. Invariably, what will happen with most of my fees, because of the nature of where most IT organizations come from, they start with, oh, I think I could just do that with Wi-Fi. And maybe they can. There's a lot of good characteristics of Wi-Fi. There's a lot of good characteristics of new things coming out of Wi-Fi. Some of you, if anybody know Halo, okay, Halo has totally different characteristics. Like I was mentioning earlier, try to do asset tracking on this. And I'm going to move it around. I want you to tell me anywhere it is. You're going to put a cellular device on that eraser? Not feasible, right? Okay, more practically, how about a wheelchair? How about a bed that you're moving around a house on? These are things you need battery power for. Anybody run a wireless door lock in their house? What's it connected over? Wi-Fi. How often you change the batteries? Monthly. My house killed it. I put a LoRaWAN network in my house, and my door locks are all LoRaWAN. I won't change it for 5 years. Big difference. All the door sensors, all the water sensors, the controller on my main water valve, all the sensors in my freezers, refrigerators, all LoRaWAN. All battery. So when we talk about different networks, they provide different value to what? To how I connect things to these devices on the right. This is a pretty high level diagram, but think about digital transformation in an enterprise. And think about not having a discussion with them about how you're going to build a network, but what is their transformation? What are their, what we call these MBA type terms? Hey, digital competencies. What is in there? Everybody knows the word data lake, right? What are they processing? What do they want to learn? These guys are sitting here telling you, hey, I can give you an intelligence layer that allows your processing of intelligence on the left to communicate with the communications on the right to make smart decisions about your enterprise. Use this connection because it's going to provide you with reliable connectivity with this latency and make sure that your processes and your work streams do what they're supposed to do. It's a huge, huge space and a very important capability. But the key thing here is, how many of you want to use a wiring? If I gave you a cell phone that was cheaper, and I said, just like any other cell phone, except to use it, you need to find a plug and plug it in the wall. It won't work otherwise. You'd say, what the? Forget it. Nobody really wants to use wires anymore. So the beautiful thing about the business we're in, ultimately, Kurt already said it, he said it earlier, ultimately, we're not competing against Wi-Fi, we're competing against wires. Right? Wires. There's a conference at McCormick Center this week. Okay, if you have time and you're in town, go to it. It's free to get in. It is the largest smart manufacturing conference in supply chain with tons of vendors building automatic guided vehicles, robotic palletization. How did I learn a lot about it? I have a 32-year-old son that's over there now. And he builds that stuff, right? Designed the robotic palletization system for the gigafactory. I won't bring Elon into this. But he taught me stuff I didn't know about manufacturing and about issues. He used the term robotic palletization. What the heck is that? We would all look at it and say, oh, it's a conveyor belt. But he looks at it and he goes, the smart conveyor belt. It makes a decision to move a package left, right, center, conveyor it up, left. And guess what he tells me? You go along the path of these complex conveyors, there's a decision-making controller all along the path. How are they connected to that? Wires, right? And they're trying to figure out an opportunity, ways to get rid of those wires. Why? They don't want to pull the wires. It's expensive. What do supply chain organizations do with their supply chain to stay aligned with the market? They change it. We got a new vendor. We're going to produce these products, or we're going to move these things this way. We got to change the alignment. Guess what? Now you got to do rewire. It's a pain in the arse. Nobody wants to do that. We don't like wires. So, you know where I'll be tomorrow if you're in town. I'm going to be over at McCormick Place. It's a feeding ground for the problem that people are trying to do. So anyway, I don't know if this all makes sense here, but that's at least one of my very high level views of this thing. One of the other things I pull in here, the sheet for the data guy, you're welcome to this. This is a Deloitte study, but I thought it was pretty good. It just gives you a data example of everything you guys are saying throughout the day. What does all of this try and get you towards? It gets you towards improved efficiency, improved security, taking advantage of the new technologies. The guys who do not study it, the guys who do not move off of old technology on behalf of their organizations are subject to good old Clayton Christensen's Innovator's Dilemma book, right? One of the biggest Innovator's Dilemma organizations is right here in Chicago, or it was. You might know them. Motorola. Pretty much no longer in existence, except for Motorola Solutions is still doing pretty good, right? Small people. Our organizations have to innovate and move to the next level, right? Someone mentioned, Kurt had in the slide Super Bowl. Had some experience with that. And funny stories, because they have technologies for organizations like Fox Sports to communicate when they operate a Super Bowl. There's some close to 1,500 Fox Sports people that go there to run a Super Bowl. Think about that. If you watch it, and by the way, it's a 1 week event. Most people know it as a Sunday event, but it's a 1 week event. There's all the televising and international stuff that goes on. Communications of the operations people is a critical piece. They're still using what I call kind of hotspot channelized audio comms devices for communication. We went in and deployed JMALIFE, a private 5G network, and hooked them up with hands-free intercom stuff, much like the coaches use during the Super Bowl. You know what the number one thing is? Different producers came and said to me while I was there, "You guys will think this is funny. You know this thing says Think about it. We take mobility for granted sometimes, right? They say connected everywhere they went. They were like shocked that would do that. Why was it important to them? You have Howie, who's supposed to move from a field desk where you've seen him on TV standing there, doing the sports broadcast, which is outside of the stadium, but they got to move him from there in time for halftime on the place inside. Where is he? Who has him? The person that's responsible for making sure they get him over to that location all the time can't communicate. Box picking. Right? And here all of a sudden they were like, right where we're at. We'll be there in 1.5 minutes. So communication and connectivity in that case was so critical for the efficiencies that went on there. Right? This is my funny wheel of fortune, right, in terms of use cases. I think I can actually click on it too here. It won't work on my screen. To change the slide, it does spin. If I only had low latency, it would be a mobility problem. But couple things, in terms of the decision factors. There's many things that can be connected to private wireless, right? But you've got to focus on the connections and the workflows that are solved in business. You do may say this again, you got to do the math, you got to look at the cost, the return performance and more. Apply private wireless, but it's not only private wireless. Remember, Wi-Fi works for certain things. Private wireless CBRS works for certain things. Frankly, public wireless works for certain things. There's all kinds of other wireless inside of enterprises. Zigbee. How many APs you buy today have built-in Zigbee and DOE? Why? And Halo, soon, right? Door locks. How do door locks communicate? Wi-Fi? Nope. Zigbee. Local Zigbee controllers. Sometimes some controllers, APs, in a hotel, for example, sometimes built into the AP. Anybody know why BLE in an AP? What am I going to use it for? Location. Probably one of the biggest things is location. The cellular networks give you location? No. I'll say no, not indoors. You can query through a port, a UE device, a phone, for certain location information. If it doesn't see GPS, that isn't very reliable. How good is GPS on buildings? How good is time of arrival? Think of it as triangulation in a building. If I have a wireless system in there that covers 2 floors in one sector, I get no triangulation. If I have a lot of base stations, I might, right? But I can also query a UE device for what DLE beacons it sees. Guess what? All of a sudden those beacons will start to sound familiar. So the reason I give you just that little bit of color is this ecosystem is not about private wireless network or a Wi-Fi network. It is about how different characteristics of all these things we were deploying a customer can be utilized as a system create options for the customer. I don't know about you guys, but I'll tell you, 9 out of 10 times I go in, even for like gas or other things, they're always asking about, how do I get data and how do I get location? It's not easy to do, all right? It's a fun place to study and spend a lot of time on it. There's a lot of different ways to do it. But worth looking at. Key thing is apply the right wireless to the use case. CBRS is not the only option, even though today we're talking on it. Right? Lastly, if you go to the OnGo Alliance website, you can go in there. If you haven't done it, and click on the FCC registered devices. Really good long list of vendors. I looked yesterday or whatever it was, Friday, somewhere over 1,000 on the site and growing regularly. That occurred, I think, like year, 18 months ago, it was half that or something. It's grown substantially. And I'm sure there's many more, in the box, right? And again, these are just what they have registered on their site as vendors that have gone through and registered FCC. Key message here for all of you is there is a lot of ways to connect things. And trust me, we've had to connect televisions and hotel rooms. Wi-Fi, believe it or not, it sounds funny. Using private 5G, which was mentioned somewhere earlier, using private 5G to connect Wi-Fi. Why would you do such a thing? It's really simple. It costs me thousands of dollars to pull cat cable into a room when I got to take rooms out of service for like healthcare or hospitality. There's an ROI. And if I can put Wi-Fi in a room because I put in a private 5G network and it gives them everything I need, you got a business. Big hit. If it's a greenfield build and I'm pulling cable, this whole cable's pretty cheap, right? Full cat cable. So again, a lot of different use cases, a lot of different devices out there, growing every day. Be conscious of that and leverage them in a way that is useful. So one last slide, and this is because it's kind of the elephant in the room sometimes. It's about making mobile phone connections, so mobile network operators, your cell phone working. And I drafted this, I think I wrote a post up on LinkedIn surrounding this diagram. So this, and you're welcome to see this, to help try to explain. So 3 buckets. I've got a private 5G network and I want to use it to connect mobile phones transparently for cellular connectivity to my operation. So the funny thing about it, it is very transparent. Start at the bottom left first. It's when we would use Mockin. Now keep in mind that what I'm talking about is shared spectrum. So CBRS spectrum that advertises AT&T, PLN, T-Mobile, etc. And any of your phones do a handover from the outside macro network onto the CBRS. These are operational. This is being done today. The beauty of it is, for the user, it's very transparent. I don't have to get a separate SIM. All of my 911 works as advertised. All of my text or TWS messaging from a carrier works as advertised. There's nothing the user has to do. Okay. In the middle one is M&O. So this would be like deploying a DAS, right? Or deploying some sort of DRAM, right? Harrison dots or things like that. That, of course, is transparent for the user as well. All right. You don't have to deal with doing the mocking connectivity to the carrier side, but you have to deploy usually the licensed spectrum, right? That middle one is all about their licensed spectrum that they cover. The other one on the top left is another one that we always hear a lot about, Wi-Fi calling. How many of you have Wi-Fi calling? Turned on. You turned it on. Plenty do, but most of what I've seen, as far as, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not default on your phone. You have to make a conscious effort to turn it on. Kurt had mentioned the Super Bowl and the push to use cellular over Wi-Fi. Well, in this case, Verizon put a whole hard effort, put in a lot of radios for that Super Bowl. They really wanted to show that 5G is the way to go. And they can make a decision on the phones because they have control over profiles to redirect a lot of your data traffic over the Wi-Fi if they want. And it's been done in states just to help offload deployment. But Wi-Fi calling, it's one of those, your results may vary. Now, voice calls don't take a lot of traffic in terms of bits per second. Do they need low latency? Not really, right? We're all voice over IP guys. Or what's the point of latency in a voice discussion when you can start to recognize it as human? Guarantee you, if I injected 30 milliseconds in our conversation, you wouldn't know the difference. It's over a half a second. Yeah. You ever want to do the test? It's a really simple thing our voice over IP guys used to do. We get on a phone call together and I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you see if you step on one another. And you see how fast we can do it. Then you'll know if your latency is additive enough to affect your voice. Now, do it over Wi-Fi. You control your Wi-Fi, things could be good. My son, I have one son that still lives at home. He's a gamer. I moved to a mesh network with Wi-Fi 6E and stuff in it, right? And I unplugged him. No, can't do that. Latency is too high. I knew he couldn't do it because he was now trying to push a cable back out that I pulled away. And I said, no, turn on your Wi-Fi because you've got a upscale gaming machine, 6E, try it. Comes back and you go, oh my God, this looks better than the YSP. Very low latency. It works well. So improving every day, but that can become a factor. The only last thing about this is the idea of private 5G for voice calling. Does it work? Anybody do it? If you know if you did it, I will tell you how you will know. If you have an eSIM in your phone, and your phone is set when you're in the private network to connect your data to the private 5G connection, and you have Wi-Fi calling turned on an iPhone, it will do Wi-Fi calling over private 5G. That's the way Apple have it set up in iOS. And then also the time when you're connected in the private network. It all goes over the internet anyway, just like Wi-Fi calling. So there's the connection from Wi-Fi calling, you look at the top, really goes into the IMS side of the network. Because it doesn't have to go to the core. It's not doing any call control. It's just because remember the IMS network, if you're familiar with VoIP, it has a SIP call controller, just like a Cisco controller, called a TAPS, right? Telephone application software, whatever, but telephony app server, thank you. So your SIP phone, your VoLTE session is just talking to the server. The same thing is true over private 5G, so it's just talking over the internet connection to that. And of course, the last thing on here is the other things. If you're using your phone, you're doing iMessage, you're doing FaceTime, or you're doing WhatsApp or a Teams call, that's all over the top. It doesn't give a damn what network you're going over. Okay? Your performance may vary if the network of choice doesn't really work well. Could be another means for making connection decisions, right? But anyway, again, you're welcome to that diagram. If you follow me on LinkedIn, somewhere here in the last week or so, I did a funny post.
In the next day, they have 1,500 designers deciding
Mhm.
what is the endpoint that is coming to, how much buffering, how much throttling, how much packet stuff.
That's right.
Each network level. So that is complexity which can be taken care of by someone.
And guess what they optimized for? They optimized for your network to be shit.
Yeah.
That's what they optimized for.
So there's minimal software you have.
Mm-hmm. They did. And if you ever watch the traffic on a startup of a Netflix session, you'll see that initial inflows are great. And if your network stinks, that's why sometimes you see this on the screen for a while. And then once it starts going, it works. You hear people say, it's fun for a while, but now my movie's okay. Yeah, we got the buffer loading and we get just enough capacity now. And they will dynamically optimize the encoder for the capacity you have. Right, right, right. Yeah, my network quality sucks. We'll get a better network. Right. But I throw you these little things out as anecdotes because this is the stuff you'll deal with. When you deploy a 5G network in a customer site and something like that doesn't work right, and it won't be necessarily handovers aren't working because they don't even know. It's just that, well, we disconnect for a while, right? We learned a lot of that. We talked about factory and AGV. A lot of it is that. But suddenly the way Wi-Fi was working, it wasn't dealing with the loss of packets during the handover. Wi-Fi is getting better at that. Let's not forget about it. Not standing still. It's innovating. So there's a lot of convergence occurring. I think that's enough for that one. And I think that's. Any questions?
Where we've done like we decided before we did a few minutes on that. Like you said, running over the top applications without having the whole assignment. Go. Right. Those things pretty well.
Every voice call and voice or video system you make today is all IP UDP packets over there, right? There's nothing really in the middle. The strange thing about it, the funny elephant in the room is if you think about your mobile phone connection, what are the things that you need now? Connection to the internet to get back to all the data you need, whether it's you as a consumer connecting to Instagram or you as a user connecting to your email for business, it's an internet connection. I can connect to the internet so many ways other than the mobile cellular network operator. What is the one thing you can't do very easily? You need a phone number. They run a number plan system and give you that portability of your phone number that is representative of you. What's the other thing you can't do? Get in your car and drive 70 miles an hour from here an hour north of Chicago and try and stay on your phone. Wi-Fi isn't going to work too well. So the beauty of that network is really connectivity and wild and that personal phone calling mechanism. Probably also the emergency system, which is becoming more and more and more important. And I can tell you firsthand, the operators are more and more paying attention to things like the messaging mechanisms and garnering location on a 911 call. Right. Location today, by default, by definition, is the latest 6th edition or whatever of the FCC mandate, still allows location on a 911 call to essentially be the address of the building. So I'd say if you're in a hotel room and you use your cell phone to call, there's a high likelihood you're going to die. So they won't really know what room you're in, but unless you tell them, right? So, but that's getting better. Many of them are now querying the additional information on the phone to identify beacons, for example, and they're mapping all those. And I think we'll see that get better off the voice emergency calls. Anyways, I'll stop there.
Thanks for bringing us back to schedule. Just kidding. But actually, we did schedule till 4, and we have our last speaker. And thanks everybody for holding up here and listening. I hope this was really informative for you guys. A lot of you guys live in this world all day, and to be honest, I live in this world for the last 15 plus years. And every time I come to a session like this, I learn something new. So I hope you learned something new. And here's to Eric.
Yes. So I'm going to make mine quick. Everything in mine was pretty much already discussed today. And I pretty much mean everything. Like if we go slide by slide, you'll see everything was discussed. I'm with Todd on the aspect of I was thinking more of LTE in private cellular. So, I kind of geared mine toward that as well. I'm with Bicell. If you don't know who Bicell is, we're a manufacturer of small cell RAN. And that's basically what we do. We have end-to-end solution for private cellular.
4G or 5G, it doesn't matter. Basic agenda, how do you know a customer is a good fit? We talked about it all morning, so I'm going to skip that section. Criteria for your immediate target, we talked about it all morning, so I'm going to skip that section as well. We'll get straight to key points your sales and technical team need to know and how to get started with learning this. Wrong way again. Wait, am I going the wrong way? Okay. The color threw me off. Let's see that. All right. So key points that your sales team and technical team need to know. So understanding the fundamentals, whether it's private LTE, whether it's wireless, it doesn't matter. Sales specific knowledge, technical specific knowledge, and collaboration and communication. So understanding the private fundamentals is key. Knowing what you're talking about, what you're doing, that's where you have to start. So the difference between your private LTE, private cellular, even your Wi-Fi networks, you need to understand the differences. So how you could actually talk about it one way versus another. Key components of private LTE network. Mike put it up there a little while ago, the core, the RAN, the UEs, all of that, all the way down to the SIM cards. You need to understand that. Understanding of spectrum, so your SAS, also CBRS, your license, first license, compatibility of your networks, whether it's an NSA, non-standalone or standalone network. You need to fully understand these basics when it comes to the fundamentals. The benefits and use cases, we talked about it all morning, some great use cases this morning. So you need to understand enhanced security, reliability, and low latency, where it fits in your network. Is it a part of what you need to do? Is it a coverage issue that you're looking at, a capacity issue? All of those are things you need to look at, the benefits and use cases, control over your entire system, and specific use cases in target industries. So today we're talking about manufacturing. And the other thing, competitive landscape is part of the fundamentals. You need to understand the Wi-Fi, the public cellular, and other wireless technologies. You're killing me because we talked about everything today. But it makes it a lot quicker. It does do that. I mean, it does help us catch up. Is there a question? Yeah, I know.
Well, if your microphone is off on the recording, it looks like your picture.
Oh, no. So they got the camera up there, but they have that muted, so there's not the echo. So Ashish has his Teams going here. So that's why you see it glowing every time I pop up. So sales specific knowledge, value propositions. Seriously, everything is the same from earlier. Clearly articulating the ROI, the biggest thing. If you can't make money, as Mike said, money, safety, they're key. Sales process and tools, understanding the sales cycles, the key milestones. You have to look at all this when you're actually showing off what you could do for a customer. Pricing and contract, OpEx, CapEx, you have to know this stuff. And target market and customer profiling. Again, mentioned earlier. Everything was mentioned earlier. Oh, experiences? Okay, I can do that here in a few minutes. So I'm just trying to get us a little caught up because we're already 90 minutes behind with one more section to go. Okay, so technical specs knowledge, network design and deployment. So this is key. I've been a sales engineer for, probably the better part of 20 years at this point. So designing it, having your channel management, getting all that is very key. Mike talked about it earlier, how have part of your spectrum for CBRS in the lower, and then the other aspect in the higher. So that way, if one slows down or one shuts off, you can fall back to the other. So that's under spectrum management. Also, we all heard it, measure twice, cut once. That's a whole thing of planning everything out. So part of installing, so conduct your site surveys, your RF planning, do everything that you need to do beforehand. It's quite comical that we talk about all the different technology and how it matters in manufacturing. One of the jobs I did do for a long time was actually asset tracking. And then during asset tracking, it was for a company in Marysville, Ohio. So one of the major car manufacturers. The issue they were having, they were losing cars. Whole cars, they were losing them from the assembly line, just disappearing, just falling off. They couldn't figure it out. So the right technology, well, I thought we were talking about LTE today. That's not the right technology for it. BLE was what they were using. So they were using BLE tags in certain parts of the assembly line to make sure they were not losing any kind of cars. So it's crazy how you look at each scenario, and every scenario is different than the next scenario. And that's where understanding everything comes into play, and designing and deploying it properly works out. Network performance and optimization. That was the key part of why I was there, was optimizing the network. It was a BLE network, so we had to figure out, make sure when this tag came through here, are we seeing it? Is it coming up in the right location? Do we know which one it is? And then troubleshoot and support, device integration and management. I think it was Mike discussed the device integration as well. Demystify everything. Make it simple to where anyone can truly understand what is going on. So you keep that device integration and management down to where the customer, all they have to see is what they need to know. Does this work? Is this what I'm putting here? Am I done for the day? That's all they really want to know. Collaboration and communication. So joint customer meetings, share your knowledge, go back and forth. Again, we know what we're talking about here now, but MXD, they might know something different than we do. So we have to share the knowledge together to figure out how I can best help them, how they can best help me help them. So you have to work collaboratively to make that happen. Feedback loops, back and forth. Talk and talk and talk and talk, and make sure that you are actually piling on and learning and getting the right fit for the customer. And then, of course, customer relationship management. We don't need to talk about that. So the best part, how to get started. What can you do? Again, this was done from a private cellular aspect. So starter kits and network in a box. You see them all the time. Again, am I going the wrong way? Okay, no. The colors are killing me. So starter kits and networks in a box. So why do it this way? Why start this way? This is the best way to learn, to start figuring out, do I know this technology? How can I deploy this? So this is going to give you your hands-on experience that you need. Everybody hates this, or I do personally. It's proof of concepts. You know, yes, it's horrible, horrible. Yes.
You know, but it's out there. It's part of the whole ecosystem.
Exactly. Pilot trial, yes, and they just go on forever. So whether it's a POC or a trial, it's horrible. Proof of purchase, I like that. Use case pilot. All right, so with the starter kits, it is a quick way of developing that understanding, learning at your own pace. Then you can start breaking it, troubleshooting it, and truly understanding the entire technology. And then the last thing you can do is start adding to it, experimentation and testing. Okay, I think that's all I have. Yeah, good. Again, I wanted to make it quick since we did most of it anyway. So yeah, any questions about any of that? But no, I don't actually. No, it wasn't. It wasn't a car. It was seriously like they were losing 3 to 5 a week. It's just they would find them like in the dumpster, just out of the blue. Part of the car would be finished, and then it would come off the side. So what happens is it comes along this conveyor belt, and they'll do audits, and they'll pull one to the side. And sometimes that one doesn't make it back as what they were finding, and that part would just get trashed. And then they would just find one at the end of the night toward the out of the conveyor belt and just crash it. Exactly. So I mean, it's just wild to think that they were losing something that big, and that you had to go in there and truly create a network for them just to not lose a car.
So they did not have any sensors to.
They did not before we were there. Afterward, they did. And then so the sensors would cross certain points of the entire conveyor belt, and that's where they would know it was crossing and we're still good, we're still live, keep going.
We heard a discussion about open RAM, buffer RAM, which is small cell based. We talk about when one base and versus other, and how, from a best practices perspective for anybody who's starting to kind of figure out the right network, where one is applicable and one is not.
Todd actually talked about that during the last section, actually. So with the small cells, you're developing a base station here, a base station here, a base station here. You're having your signer, you're having your handoffs. Whereas with Open RAN, you're using one radio and it's pretty much, utilizing one spectrum, and then you're able to do just simple handoff, true mobility.
Okay.
You do, but the signer is more of a faster handoff and lesser of mobility. And so the small cells is more of a faster version of Wi-Fi 5, Wi-Fi 6.
And Eric, just for clarity, think about the handover is handled by the node lead, the base. So just apologies for that. So one is small cell, that function, the baseband, you need small cell. So when you go from small cell to small cell to small cell, there's a handover button. If you go to the central baseband and you have distribution to radios or in ORAN nomenclature, RU, radio type, the connection from the baseband to the RU is the ORAN protocol, which is Ethernet on top of Ethernet, right? And requires an Ethernet switch like I showed. Now, when you do that, depending on the RAM, you can have what's called simulcast. So all of those RUs are essentially in the same cell. There is no handover.
Correct.
They're all part of the same cell. Right? So that mitigates a lot of the signer issues. These are just trade-offs. Right? The design.
Yeah, so like small cells, fast, quick, easy. We've heard that. Whereas ORAN, there's a little bit more complication to deploying it. More handoffs, small cell, you have to do more planning for your spectrum. ORAN, you do not. You can use the same 20 megahertz across the entire facility. Pardon? Small cell is typically significantly cheaper than ORAN. Would you agree with that?
But depending on the depends on how you
Depends how you do the math, right? So all cells typically founded on chip set, certain limitations to them, such as capacity. If 20 or 40 megahertz is plenty, that's okay. A typical small cell, I think I'm correct, of the biocell are like 40 megahertz.
Correct. Yep.
LE, 2CA, or 40 megahertz channels for 5.
It's 22 and then 40 total.
Yeah. So if you're deploying a scenario where you've got a lot of use cases and you need 100 megahertz capacity, then you got to make a decision. A lot of the ORAN systems, like an Ericsson or KMA, or up to a full 150 megahertz in the RU. But it's going to cost more. So how do you calculate the return? If you need more capacity with small cells, you got to put 2 small cells in and put them in different channels. Right, in every area. So now you're double the number. So those are just trade-offs. It's hard, and I would contend with everybody, don't go in just looking at what's cheapest.
Yes.
Look at the problem you're solving and what are the requirements. Because the small cell may be a perfect answer. It meets the requirements. But on the flip side, you may find that it's a big enough network to not solve the problem. It also depends on redundancy and other things. Right.
This is like the same conversation of 5G. Right now you have 5G standalone where it's just pure 5G infrastructure, and then non-standalone where it could use 4G. You have the trade-off there to where 5G NSA is quicker to deploy, but you do lose a lot of the futuristic functionalities if you don't go with the standalone true 5G network.
we talk about providing access to both Wi-Fi and what's the use case for that? How we can do that?
So that would be in a hybrid system that if you had, an implementation, you already had a location for your Wi-Fi or you already had a location for your you wanted to expand the coverage from that location. If you do that and then the Wi-Fi, because it'll go 5 gigahertz, 800 to 1,000 feet, it's more usable to go out from, like a retail space or something like that, where you have the redundancy of Wi-Fi and CBRS boxes. Then you have the distance of CBRS, you can keep going. And then off that Wi-Fi, you can just keep building out from there, other access points if you want to basically create an entire Wi-Fi network underneath your CBRS.
You're using the CBRS as a cover site. Your Wi-Fi hanging on.
Well, so our antenna has both CBRS and a Wi-Fi lead. So there's not really
What do you use for your backup?
whatever the SI is providing. So, but the CBRS can do that, right?
And on the distance.
Yeah. So we're the antenna company. We're not the solution provider, but we want to give you a tool that will modify your toolkit and change the way you think about traditional Wi-Fi, so that it can become, oh, I've got distance on this. So what can I do with that? So that's kind of, that's why it's that one is integrated. We had a long discussions about what we should be integrating and why, and so that's what we came up with is really that it's kind of the start of the Wi-Fi underneath, if you want it, or it's just a Wi-Fi immediately around it if you wanted to. If you just wanted to provide that Wi-Fi underneath the CBRS, because CBRS is going to go for it, right? It's especially the outdoor, it's got way more power than you'll ever be able to turn on it.
And it's also a good complement. So
Yeah.
we all know that every enterprise has Wi-Fi, and they're not going to give it up. We go in and can improve that Wi-Fi network by reducing the amount of infrastructure. Dramatically reducing the amount of infrastructure, and then complementing the network by allowing them to add CBRS, running two separate networks through one phase bridge. And they don't see each other, there's no.
Is it safe to say, if you have a covered area, large area, generally, and what you want to be able to do is have single antenna that can do the CBRS coverage area, but then also with your asymmetrical gain capabilities on Wi-Fi, do the same coverage area for Wi-Fi, do that one antenna, you can do both.
So yes, but we forgot to add, the asymmetrical gain is also there for CBRS. So it's not just Wi-Fi, but so it actually will increase the CBRS to whatever, I mean, it's 24 dB that it's adding as part of the CBRS. You can get up to whatever, 47 dBm. No, it's not under that. It's receiving. It's never counted. Yeah, it's never counted. So that's kind of why we went there. The FCC doesn't care. Yeah. But we want to really care.
Absolutely. The little UE and fighters on there, and
You don't have to buy SAS registers, you get needs for CPE.
how do you do that?
So we like to say that we listen very, very closely, to very faint signals and bring them back. And that's what we're trying to do. But, to get there, you have all that, added benefit all along the way.
Our customers are doing looking forward. So, getting the signal there and then allowing the folks down in Florida to utilize the Wi-Fi machine.
Anybody else has, if their plane is not freezing already? Well, first of all, thank you. We had another section, as Eric mentioned. It was more of a panel discussion. We all agree we enough have panel discussion today. We already had the panel discussion. The whole session was a panel discussion. Yes. But I truly appreciate everyone coming here today, everyone staying for the whole day. I hope you learned something. Our job, as I said, is really to educate, drive discussions like this. We are here to serve the SIs, the MSPs, the enterprises, and join us in this mission. If you have customers who are struggling you're struggling to answer questions. If your customers are struggling to get their questions answered, send our way. We'll help them. We'll help you, and that's what we're here for. Thank you.